Good afternoon and welcome to our TPEA sponsored education series, our Friday webinar series. My name is John Green with Association Member Benefit Advisors. I'll be sharing with you a little bit here in a moment, but just a couple of housekeeping details because we have so many people that are jumping on our webinar today, just so that you know kind of some of the protocols and things like that. We do record every one of these webinars. We put them out on the TPEA website for members to view, to reference for later points as well. All participants are in a listen only mode. And what that means is if you've got a question or you've got something that you want to share, please drop that into Q&A or into chat. And depending upon who the question may be directed to, or if it's very specific to your situation, we may respond back to you directly. Or if it's something that the whole group could benefit from, we will address it as a group. My co-host today is Deanna Bauckham. She is one of our leaders at AMBA in the Austin area. I'll share a little bit about AMBA in just a moment, but we're also joined by your Executive Director, Ann Bishop, your Legislative Associate, Rmd, and Charlotte Wilson, who runs the operation for TPEA, the Texas Public Employees Association. So grab a pen and paper today. We're going to give you some tips to write down. We're going to walk through some different concepts and things and get to know you a little bit better as we roll through here. But you also see this QR code here. And I know some of you already taken advantage of that QR code already. We're going to show this at the end. If there is something that you have a desire for more information about or want someone to review your benefits, Deanna and her team can take care of that for you. All you have to do is take your smartphone, just like we do in restaurants, open up your camera feature, hover over that QR code, a little form will pop up and you can complete that and get any information that you want to talk about as we go through here today. Just a quick reminder for those of you who may not be familiar with the Texas Public Employees Association. It's been around for over 75 years now. It has been around before TRS, or before ERS, I should say, before all of the benefits that the state provided, and TPEA was so instrumental in getting those things in place for public employees. They are there to help protect your ERS defined benefit, that biggest asset that you're working there for, working towards different targeted funding for salaries, for increases, cost of living increases, access to best in class benefits and things like that. And just to promote this social connection among employees and retirees who have chosen public service as their livelihood and their life. And we appreciate that. So I want to bring in Ray and Ann right now. Ray's been testifying, lots of hearings going on. Ann's getting ready to jump in. So Ann or Ray, I'm going to let you, one of you go first and tell me what's going on, and then we'll jump in and discuss some of the things that you're testifying. Ann, I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, thank you so much, John, and thanks for everybody for being on. I'm going to mute because I'm at the Capitol and sometimes it's very loud when these people who are touring the Capitol come through and let Ray talk about all the budget hearings we've been attending the last couple of weeks and actually the last month, and they'll be winding up next week, as well as other things that we have going on.
Thank you, Ann. Ann and I both have been testifying before what are called the budget hearings. They are sponsored by the combination of panels that include representatives from the Governor's Budget Office, the Legislative Budget Board, and the respective budget committees of the House and Senate, and also any other senior aides who might have an interest in the policy areas associated with a particular agency. In our testimony, we have consistently stressed a few points. One is that the state employees generally have not received a pay raise since September of 2014. That was a very modest increase across the board. And that since that time, inflation has eroded the purchasing power of each individual's dollar salary by 27%. Well, the same holds true, of course, for those of you who are retired. You will see a rapid erosion if this rate of inflation continues in the value of your pension check. So we have been testifying to the effects of inflation starting in fact before the Senate Finance Committee in the spring and back in May. where we talked about the effects, very negative effects of inflation on both retirees and employees. So that's kind of looming out there. We did most recently testify before the House Appropriations Committee regarding the ERS fund and an implementation of Senate Bill 321, which of course created not only shored up ERS, but created a new retiree group going forward. We've put some on your screen. You will see a screenshot, a panel of, a group of state agency workforce plans can be looked, if you want to look at that for your former agency, and you can look at the LAR requests by various agencies and the joint budget hearing schedule. We have additionally, Ann gave testimony at the ERS budget hearing regarding the value of the legacy payments, the additional payments the legislature has put in to ERS that have caused it to be on the brink of being actuarially sound. And the significance of that is that if they put just a little more money in this coming biennium, they could very well put themselves into a situation where they were in sufficiently good shape fiscally to be able to afford to give a 13th check to retirees, in addition to the group of retirees who've been retired 20 or more years. They are required by statute to first give an across the board percentage increase to of 3%. So, and we also, of course, support ERS in its continued good management of the insurance program, where you're going to see as you're now in retirement, how valuable that is and how rare it is to have a full-blown health insurance plan as a retiree. That is a very rare thing in the private sector. And even in the public sector, it's not as good as the plan that you have if you were to start comparing it with other folks. So we will continue to we have one more week, as Ann said, of testifying before these panels on the appropriations requests of various agencies. And we will be continuing also our traipsing around the Capitol as we visit with various legislative staff and legislators alike. As you know, there's some of them who still aren't coming in that much, but we're also relying on phone calls and emails, et cetera. So we are keeping very active. And Gina Stannard, our membership relations director, has joined us in testifying before some of these agencies and in some of these meetings. We really appreciate that. And she's definitely coming up to speed very quickly on it.
Right.
You will be,
one of the things
as we
I
get
wanted
closer to the
Right. One of the
session.
things I wanted to point out, sorry for interrupting, is that we put in our last newsletter the link to Porter's testimony before the House Appropriations Committee. So if you are interested in what Porter Wilson, the Executive Director of Employees Retirement System, said at the hearing, then you can watch it via the link in our last newsletter.
Thank you, Ann. That's a great reminder. And I really urge you to do that, to see that what ERS is laying out in terms of possible additional legacy payments. You will now, as a retiree, have a lot more flexibility to contact your local legislator, and we will urge you to do so. And if you give us your cell phone number, you can sign up for text alerts from us. And believe me, we do not abuse this. We do not overload you with text alerts. But as we're approaching the session, it'd be important to have your cell number so that we could ask you to contact your legislator regarding any possible legislation or budget proposal which would impact you. So you text the word on your cell phone, text the word all cap TPEA to 313131. You text that from your cell phone and we'll pick up your cell phone number and we'll have you on our list, which is tens of thousands of folks now that we send out text alerts to. So that's I believe that there's a question, is that still a valid number? It was the last number that I had, but we'll 313131. Hannah, is that still? Okay. All right. Well, we'll double check on that. We'll circle back around on that.
Especially with
but,
the legislative session coming up after elections, it's important to have that number and get signed up for that.
Yep. We have also, I want to remind you and urge you to vote, and the registration deadline is October 11th. October 11th. And if you go to the TPEA website, you can see a lot of material about different candidates and their positions on issues of interest to employees and retirees alike. So I urge you to vote, and the election is in November, of course, but you'll be early voting starting about late October. So I'm on that note, John, I'm going to hand it back to you. And thank all of you who have done so much for the state of Texas, and congratulations on your retirement.
Exactly. Ray Ann, thank you very much for continuing to join us. I'm going to have Ray and Ann stay with us because of their background with the state and having retired from the state. I want them to kind of share some of their insight, because this webinar today has a little bit of insight, a little bit of hard facts, a little bit of realized facts that come in there. But just a quick reminder for those of you who are not members of TPEA, the work that TPEA does on your behalf to make sure that legislative funding for your pension, possible increases in pension, COLAs, things like that, benefits, all of those things, TPEA advocates on your behalf. If you're an active state employee, it's $7.50 a month to sign up, and you can do that at tpea.org. Deanna and her team can help you out if you want to that way. If you're a retiree, it's only $2.50. Now, I want to be very clear. Some of you may have had your $7.50 a month dues deducted from your paycheck as a state employee, but now that you've retired, you may have forgotten to sign back up as a retiree. So please, please, please sign back up as a retiree, because your support is so valuable. This small investment of $2.50 a month for retirees protects your biggest asset, that asset being your pension that you've worked so hard for. So highly encourage you to do that. We also, if you've got a spouse that's not a state employee or is not a state retiree, or just a friend of TPEA, you can also be an associate member for $2.50 a month and get access to the legislative advocacy, the newsletter that Ann talked about, where you can get the recording and hear the testimony from the head of ERS, just to see what the things that are so important to you that you've worked all your career for. I highly encourage you to become a member of TPEA as a result of that. My name is John Green. I work with Association Member Benefits Advisors, but I was employed by the Texas Highway Department back when I was 6 years old, back in June of 1973. That's me in the yellow hard hat there. My grandfather worked for the Texas Highway Department, and every summer from when I was 5 to 8, I got to travel with him in his car or ride in the big equipment while we built roads out near Throckmorton. Now, I know OSHA wouldn't allow that to happen now, but it was an incredible experience, and I value that. But the reason I show you this picture, my grandfather, my mother, and my aunt all worked for the Texas Highway Department. They were all state employees. My grandfather was a retiree from Texas State Service. Because of what he did and because of what TPEA did on his behalf, he had a very solid retirement because of what TPEA advocated to create ERS, to make sure that all these things happened so that he could raise a family, send 3 kids to college, even on a state employee's salary. So I'm very thankful for that and the time that I got to spend that way. At Association Member Benefits Advisors, we partner with TPEA to help provide education and benefits and fill those gaps that aren't covered by your state benefits. Some things that you left behind when you left the state. They're portable. When you leave state employment, we've got many members that will leave state employment, go to private sector, maybe come back, things like that. You can take these benefits with you wherever you go. We have many members of TPEA or state retirees that move out of state. You don't have to worry about any networks or anything like that. But the biggest advantage of your TPEA benefits is that you can extend those benefits to your parents, to loved ones maybe to kids that have aged out of your state benefits, and they can help you get benefits for them. Because so many of our state employees retire and go on to work a second job or a second career, but you're still responsible for your parents or a loved one, you can have proper benefits on them and prevent you from having to take extended time off of your new career to take care of your loved one. So that's some benefits that you have there. And today we're going to talk about, we really designed this webinar for those of you who may have retired. We have a large group that retire in July, August, and now we're talking about what to do, what's next. We're going to discuss this whole life cycle of a retired state employee from the day you cross that retirement finish line till the day we leave this earth. We're going to talk about those stages. We're going to identify those benefits that you kept, those benefits that you lost, and help you to be aware of very key dates in your life cycle, because you've got some changes you've got to watch out for. And then Ray and Ann are going to fill in some of that color. And we've learned from people who've retired before you what to watch out for and how to make the most of your endorsed options. But to help us on this call, to help Deanna and I understand most of who's out there, we're going to launch a quick poll. And I want you to tell us what your current retirement status is. We want to see how many of you retired just in this past year, how many have been retired for more than a year. And those of you are saying, you know what, I'm thinking about it, but I haven't pulled that trigger yet. So let's take a look, and we'll just open this up for about 15 to 20 more seconds. Getting great response here. We've got a super mix of folks out here, because what we want to do is kind of design our conversation that way. But more importantly, we want to answer your specific questions. So drop those into Q&A. The question and answer, if you put it into Q&A, it allows us to keep a transcript, and we can follow up with some of those individual questions and put them out there, because with a group this large, we probably won't be able to get to a lot of questions out there. All right, so I'm going to end this poll and share the results. We've got a really nice spread out there. We've got about 25% of you that have retired just in the past year. Congratulations. Very proud of you for that. Thank you for your service. The other 30% of you who've been retired for more than a year, you kind of know some of this, but we're going to fill you in on some key dates. And for the remainder of you, the 45+% of you that hadn't quite pulled that trigger yet, we're going to get you there. We're going to help you understand some things you need to think about beforehand and walk you through. And this is the value of TPEA and the value of AMBA together, because we can help you counsel through that as we go through here. So the two things that we never, ever, ever want a retiree to tell us is, I wish I would have known something sooner, or I had to work longer because something happened. Deanna and I know Ann and Ray and Charlotte have seen retirees that said, if I would have only known this, I would have done something different. Or I had to work longer, or I had to quit sooner than I expected because something happened to a family member or something happened in my life. We want to avoid that. And that's the whole point of this webinar today. So when we're talking about the retirement life cycle, that finish line of retirement is really just the beginning. You've worked all your career, you've worked all your life. Now let's take control a little bit of way. So we're going to talk about the 6 segments, or the 6 stopping points, so to speak, in the retirement life cycle. Retirement, the exploration phase, maybe the desire to go back and work some more. You turn 65, that's a crucial date, and we're going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about just kind of your health and care, maybe as you get up into those later years, and then what happens when we pass away, what some of those triggers that take place there. So we're going to break this down and look at it from kind of the hard facts, the things you need to do, and then some of the things you need to consider. Ray and Ann gave me some tremendous talking points, some tremendous ideas, some soft things you need to know about, some things that they learned, some things that many TPEA members that have been retired for several years have told us. And so we're going to go through that as we walk through this piece here. So let's look at that retirement. You've crossed that finish line. Those of you retired less than a year, those of you retired more than a year, you've hit that date. Some financial steps I want you to take is to update your documents. And I'm going to show you a form that you can do that in a moment. Update your documents, but more importantly, double check your Social Security. Go out to ssa.gov and just make sure you're signed up to see your statement. Whether you've received Social Security benefits or whether you're still years away from receiving Social Security benefits, double check what they've got down for you. Number of quarters worked, all of your stats and figures and your estimated retirement, your estimated Social Security checks, things like that. If there's something wrong, it's better to correct it now than after you start drawing your Social Security or when you want to start applying for Social Security. When you retire, I want you to start re-examining your budget. A lot of financial experts will tell you you need about 70 to 80% of your take-home pay in your retirement years. Well, depending upon your situation, it may be more, it may be less. With inflation, you may need more than you anticipated. Understand your benefits. Understand the benefits that you keep, understand the benefits that you lose when you retire. We'll talk about that in a moment, but understand what benefits you have to you and know how they work. Deanna and her team can review those with you and understand what you have, what you don't have, and how it works there. And then you're going to have to make a decision on Texas Saver. And we're going to talk about Texas Saver because that's something that for those of you who participated in the 401k or the 457 plan, when you retire, you've got a decision to make. And the decisions that you can make are pretty wide, but you need to make sure you make that wise decision. Now, Ray and Ann shared with me some of these personal steps, and Deanna and I have not hit retirement yet, so I can't speak to this, but we deal with retirees and speak to retirees all the time. They tell you from a personal standpoint, hold off on making those major decisions once you retire. Sit down and have a dream meeting with your spouse or with your family. I'm going through Dave Ramsey's financial piece at church with my son and daughter-in-law and my nephew and his wife. And they talk about having this dream meeting. So when you retire, sit down. What does retirement look like? What do you want to do? Schedule your doctor's visits. Get on a good fit. And Ray says, maintain good sleep habits. You're used to waking up at a certain time, but now you've got the ability to stay up as long as you want to, late, all that, things like that. Maintain some good habits. Keep in a good rhythm from a health standpoint. Realize that your friends are going to change. People you've been working with all of your career for a significant portion may still work. They may not see them as much. I mean, COVID kind of separated us a little bit, but know that some of that changes, and that's okay. You're going to have different stages in your life there. And again, make sure if you were a TPEA member as an employee, continue that over as a retiree. Get re-signed back up. Make sure you get the reduced rate, that type of thing. So that's that finish line. That's just the beginning. So this is what I talk about whenever you want to start to organize your financial documents, is have an in case of death or in case of disaster checklist. Everyone on this call today, we're going to send you a copy of this checklist in a PDF form. We have your email addresses. We're going to send this to you in PDF form. I keep a copy of this checklist plus my documents right beside my phone in a plastic folder. 2 reasons. 1, in case something happens to me, my family knows what they need to do. My documents are in order. And 2, because I live near the coast, in case we have to evacuate, and we've seen those horrible pictures out of Florida this week, I can pull this folder and we can go. I encourage you, once you take this checklist and you walk down through it and pull your documents together, get your conversations together, share this with your family. Let them know where this is, what your plans are, those type of things. Use that as some of your early retirement time to get your financial house in order. Organize your documents. If you'll do that, we're going to send you this checklist. It'll give you a head start on that. So here are the benefits that you take with you, and here's the benefits you leave behind. For those of you who've retired, you know this. For those of you who haven't yet retired, just know that you're going to be able to take your health insurance with you. You're going to be able to take a little bit of basic life insurance with you if you have medical coverage through the state. If you selected that, you'll take that with you. If you have optional life insurance that you've purchased, you'll be able to take that with you into retirement. I'm putting an asterisk out there because that does change. We're going to wrap up the webinar having a conversation about that. You take your dental, your vision with you. If you have those things, you take them with you and still have access to pay for them. You have your Texas Saver, 401k and 457 account, that balance. And then you have a $5,000 death benefit as a retiree. You don't take with you any type of disability insurance, accidental death insurance, your Flex Saver FSA, or your Tex Flex FSA. You don't take those things with you. So just know what you keep and then what you don't keep, because that will help you understand where your gaps are. And then with Deanna's help and her team's help, you can understand what you may need to fill in depending upon your age as you go forward. Now, when you retire depends, of course, on your age, your service, and things like that. This is a great slide that we pulled from our friends over at Texas Saver. They wanted to illustrate this because, you've got your income when you start your career, and hopefully it goes up a little bit as you continue to grow in your position. Then you retire, but you're not usually yet eligible for full Social Security or even to start to draw your Social Security benefits, we find for most state employees. You start your ERS pension, but you still have this gap in income before Social Security kicks in. And that kind of drives your desired income gap. As a state employee, you've got a three-legged stool of your retirement income. A lot of private employers don't offer this. Your teacher friends on the TRS side don't have this as well either. So you've got Social Security, ERS, and your Texas Saver plan, your 401k, your 457, this outside savings. You have these three legs of your stool to give you a retirement income source. That's good news. All of those sources are very important. Two of those are very stable, ERS and Social Security. Some of those come with a cost of living adjustment, others don't, like ERS right now. Again, that's what TPEA is working towards. Your 401k, your 457, any IRAs, your Texas Saver account, those are variable based on the rise and fall of the stock market. You know how well that's done lately, but you've got some decisions that you need to make. So that's your income. And so you're trying to solve for that gap between your compensation that you left when you left the state, your ERS, and then before you start with Social Security. And so people ask us, what do I do with my Tex Saver plan after I retire? You can keep your Texas Saver plan right where it is. You can leave it there. There are some very minimal fees involved. You can take outside money and put that money into your plan. So say you've got an old 401k plan or an IRA from another employer, an outside employer, you can put that money into that plan as well. So it allows you to have a single source if you want it to be. You can take money out depending upon your age as whether there's a penalty or not. There will be taxes because this is tax qualified money, meaning that you've got to pay, you never paid taxes on it. But if you take it out before age 59 and a half, there could be a penalty on that money. So it's really important to understand what you can do with Texas Saver. You may be approached by somebody outside that says, now that you've retired, do you want to move it over to this account or something like that? Just know that the Texas Saver folks can counsel you through this process. You can decide to do what you want to with it. You may want to take that money and say, I don't want to expose it to the stock market. I want to put it into something that I don't ever lose any money. And maybe if it grows, that's good. But if the stock market drops, I don't lose money. You've got that flexibility, but just know that you don't have to make an immediate choice with your Texas Saver plan when you go forward that way. All right, so let's transition now. You're in this phase that you've kind of taken care of maybe some of the initial steps to your financial house and your retirement, and you're ready to start exploring. So you may not be ready to jump back into a job yet or some other type of income. Ray and some of his peers and some of your peers that have retired say, start with something modest. Don't plan on taking this round the world trip right off the bat. Start with something modest, see if you like doing that. Then start planning some of your major decisions, about what you're going to do with your home. We see a lot of retirees that will sell their home and move closer to grandkids. Don't necessarily do all that within the first few months of retirement. Start to think about that. Start to think about, do I want to take on some other income source? Do I want to consult? Do I want to take that expertise that I've gained and the connections I've made in my career and consult, do something different. Take advantage of all the discounts that you get by being a retiree. The passport program through TPEA gives you thousands of discounts all across the state, the country, and the world. That's free as part of your membership with TPEA. You can use it to travel. You can use it for shopping. You can use it for just things around the house if you want to. Fun stuff, dining, things like that. Save some money. Use it to tackle home projects. Again, it's free as part of your TPEA membership. And then 6 months to a year after you've retired, take that big trip. Now, Ray, you've gone through this phase. I want you to unmute and kind of talk about what your thought process was when you retired, and then what that thought process was when you decided to start consulting.
Thank you, John. Well, I guess the number one thing is that I knew I wanted to take a couple of trips, but I wasn't real sure, where I wanted to go in the long run. So I kept week-long trips, one out to the mountain, the Ozarks, for instance. Another one into New Mexico, the mountains of New Mexico. But I wasn't ready to make that grand tour, that great around the world trip you referenced. I also realized at some point I'd done some travel and done some household tasks that needed to be done. I did realize that I was ready for at least part-time work just for mental stimulation and just the association with a larger group of people. So that was kind of those were considerations for me personally.
Okay. You talked about that explore phase, and then you talked about that, hey, I wanted to get out and get back in it. So let's kind of move to that work some more conversation. How did you evaluate the pros and cons of your next step and consulting and stuff like that, right?
Well, I guess part of it with me was the knowledge that I'd done all I could in my care for my mother. And then in fact, my mother passed down in San Antonio. And so that kind of in a sad way did free me up to be open to, and gave me an added impetus to want to get out and be around folks and be back in the game, so to speak, to some degree. I knew that I didn't want to do it, be immersed in it full time, but I did want some exposure and some interaction like that.
Okay. And what I know you kind of went through the same thing. Tell the group what your thoughts were.
Right. Well, thank you, John. I actually went to a therapist before I retired and said, okay, I'm getting ready to retire. I've been working 40 years. How do I transition into retirement? And one of the things that he advised me of is after you retire, as you said earlier, take some time, take a breath, get sleep. It took a month just to get your sleeping back, but take your time and find something you really enjoy, your passion. And then it is work. You do it as much or as little as you want. And in my case, it took 4 years before the TPEA position became open, and my passion is state employees and retirees. So it was easy for me to transition from retirement back to working full-time because I was doing what I love. And so I think that's the advice that you give people is don't get in a hurry, find your passion, whether it's opening a business or working at a business or volunteering or whatever, but find your passion and do what you love. And that is very fulfilling.
Thank you. And you can tell Ann's passion for state employees with her background at ERS and now doing this. You can't find a stronger advocate for state employees than Ann and Ray and Charlotte and Gina and the crew and Hannah. They work so hard for you. So that passion, now you've got the opportunity to devote that in your time. It may be volunteering. It may be doing something that, with your church organization or getting in with schools, grandkids, things like that. It may be time to start doing some of those projects that you've put off for a while. But as you take on this extra income, you might need to think, how is that extra income going to affect your tax bracket? Will it affect your Medicare premiums when you start to go on Medicare? Then how is your responsibility? Ray kind of touched on this. Do you have responsibilities for a parent or a loved one that if you did take on contract work or another career where you were full-time and you had to take care of them, what would that impact your earning potential that way? What are your responsibilities? And then you got to figure, when do I draw Social Security? You've got the ability to draw it depending upon your age as early as 62. Some people will wait till 70. There's a huge difference in what you get plus what you can get in the future with any cost of living increases. So learning how to balance that out, where that income comes, is so important to knowing what type of work you want to take on and how much work you want to take on as you go forward. So now the fun begins, and I say that sarcastically. We're going to talk to you, those of you who are close to turning 65. We touched briefly on that Social Security. You've got to determine, do I now take full Social Security based on your age? Some of you now have full Social Security, maybe 67, not 65. When do you take that Social Security? Because it can impact, as I mentioned, future cost of living increases. The longer you wait, the more money you get. But can you afford to do that? At age 65 opens up your Medicare window, okay? It's a 7-month window, 3 months before you turn 65, the month you turn 65, and 3 months after. You have to sign up for Medicare, regardless of what your state benefits are. You have to sign up on ssa.gov, okay? You go to ssa.gov. Part A is free, and I say free because you've been paying into it all your career. You sign up for Part A. Part B, you have to sign up for as well. It is $170 a month, okay? So if you are taking Social Security at age 65, that Part B will come out of your Social Security check. If you are not taking Social Security yet, they will bill you individually. So just know that depending on what you're taking, you've got a responsibility that way. Know what Medicare does and doesn't cover. Know that if you are on the state plan, you still have to take out Medicare. You still have to sign up for Medicare. It becomes secondary. We'll talk about that. Ann, you want to share?
Yes, thank you, John. This is something that people don't realize when they retire before age 65, is that you are required with ERS to sign up for Medicare at your first opportunity. And that means when you first qualify. It may be different for different people, but what happens from an insurance perspective is that Medicare is deemed primary, and Health Select is considered secondary, or Health Select Advantage Plan is considered secondary, and they will only pay, even if you don't sign up for Medicare, they're not going to pay the first dollar. They're only going to pay what Medicare would have paid. So it's very important to sign up. The other thing is, I know that we say $170 a month on Part B, but actually there's a look back in terms of your salary. So depending on your salary and whether or not you went back to work and you have additional salary, that may be a higher premium. So I think the maximum premium in Medicare right now is $460. It's a scale, and they will tell you what your premium is. But again, it's something that you need to plan for and not be surprised at. And a lot of people will start taking their Social Security early just so that they can have their Medicare deducted from their Social Security check, because your state retirement check isn't large enough to be able to live on, and then take a large deduction for Medicare once you turn 65.
Exactly. Thank you, Ann. And we're going to show you in a moment. We're going to have a whole basics of Medicare webinar coming up, where we're going to talk through all of that and how life changes can impact what Part B does and things of that nature. But just, we're going to help you understand what Medicare does and doesn't cover, prepare you for what's called Rmds. So that's the other fun that's coming up very closely as well. So let's kind of roll through this. And Ann touched on this. She's my straight man here on this. With your Health Select, when you turn 65, Medicare does become primary. That language is different. So there's some different coverages in there. Health Select becomes secondary, pays on the backside of that. You start paying those Medicare premiums. Depending upon whether you're taking Social Security or not, where that comes out, they could bill you directly. So this whole 65 age is so crucial. And if you don't do it, there are penalties from the government. There's lack of coverage or lesser coverage from Health Select because it's secondary, regardless of whether you signed up or not. It's so vitally important to understand all of that transition. And that's why we point this out. That's where TPEA, that's where AMBA, Deanna's team can help you understand this concept of what Medicare does and doesn't cover, where Health Select has different gaps, things like that. So important to understand that as you go through this turning 65 situation. We get a lot of questions about required minimum distributions, or RMDs. What are they? Do I have to take them? How do I handle them with my Texas Saver account? Stuff like that. We're going to walk you through a few steps just so that you understand, because RMDs can truly have an impact for you, because it's kind of how the government gets their share back. You've been saving all this money tax-free in IRAs, 401k accounts, 457 accounts, your Texas Saver account, 403Bs, whatever. This doesn't include your pension from ERS. This doesn't include any Roth IRAs or anything you've got like in a CD, a money market account, or just plain money you've already paid taxes on. We're talking about those things that you have been putting away money pre-tax that the government said it's time to get our money back. So the way that these RMDs work, it's based on your age and the size of your account and the account balance from the previous year. You have to start taking required minimum distributions. If you were 70 and a half prior to 2020, you had to already start taking them then. If you turned 72 after 2020, then that's when you have to start taking these out. You take your required minimum distributions by April 1st of the year after you turn 72. So for those of you who've just retired, or you're not yet Social Security age, you still have some years to think about it, but you need to be aware of it. And then every year after that, you've got to have it done by December 31st. And here are some reasons you need to think about and consider. If you forget to take out your required minimum distributions, there's a 50% tax penalty. Now, it's not a penalty on what your account is, it's a 50% penalty on the taxes. So you want to avoid that. You can pick and choose where you pull these required minimum distributions from. If you've got a plan that's not doing very well, you want to take it out of that, you can do that. You can automate these, you can have them done monthly. You can have your taxes taken out of your RMDs, or you can decide not to and just pay your taxes at the end. The biggest things I want to point out: do not always rely on the person who is your fund manager for your IRAs, your old 401ks and things like that. You don't need to rely on them, because if they don't have to tell you, or they're not responsible for your RMDs. You're responsible for your RMDs. You don't have to take out cash. If you've got some equivalents, if you've got land, things like that, there's other ways that you can do this. But your RMDs, your required minimum distributions, is something you really need to watch out for as you get closer to age 72, if you turn 72 after 2020. And then you've got to look at it from the standpoint of, if you've got a spouse who's much younger than you, or certain situations, how this could impact them. So again, we can help you walk through that process there, because you've got to take care of those RMDs. I will tell you that your Texas Saver plan, they will take out RMDs on your behalf. That's one good reason why you may want to keep them there. They'll do that. Okay. If you quote the great philosopher and songwriter Tom Petty, if you're not getting older, you're dead. As we get older, there are things that we can't do for ourselves. You have to start to understand this impact as we get into our 70s or 80s and beyond, of what your long-term care needs are. How are you going to plan for someone to take care of you? What are you going to do in that recovery time after major surgeries? Medicare pays for certain things, your Health Select pays for certain things, but then there are certain things that neither Medicare nor Health Select pay for in terms of your recovery care, your long-term care. Who's going to care for you? Is it going to be somebody that you pay for? Is it going to be a family member that quits their job and takes care of you? What are you going to do for those unexpected medical costs? Because the fact is that over 70% of us, once we reach age 65, are going to need some form of extended care in our life. And most of the time, Medicare doesn't pay for this. We're responsible for it. But the sad truth is that for those of us who are going to need it, 73% of that care is provided by an informal caregiver who receives no compensation. Now, that could be a daughter-in-law, son-in-law that has to quit their job to take care of you, or as Ray mentioned, had to take care of his mother until she passed away. Preparing for that and knowing what your solutions are for that are crucial. I've seen too many nest eggs get wrecked because they've saved up all this money and they have to then use it to provide for your care when there's alternatives out there. Unfortunately, you can't call ERS and say, I need long-term care. Can you double my pension check? Doesn't work that way. Same with Social Security. So it's important to have a plan going forward. Deanna and her team can help you with some TPEA endorsed options. Now the question, what happens when we die? People have been asking that for 100 years, thousands of years, millions of years. But practically, there's some things that you need to double and triple check now and things that are going to change once you pass away. Please, please, please double and triple check your beneficiaries. Deanna and I have seen too many beneficiary checks for pension, for life insurance, for whatever, will often go to former spouses because the beneficiaries were not updated. Now that's a real fun one. Whenever I don't go to the current spouse, I go to the former spouse and give them a big check. Not a lot of fun. Or oftentimes some of the beneficiaries will be the first two children, but not the third because the third was never added on. Please double check your beneficiaries out there. Know what you have, know how much you're going to have whenever you pass away. Many of you have selected a certain type of pension payout that once you pass away, your pension could be cut in half or your pension could go totally away, depending upon how you selected that. So it's important to understand what you've got out there. Use that ICOD checklist that we're going to send you to help understand what your additional needs are, where your coverage is, ease that transition. Because whenever you pass away, those that you leave behind, if they're still on your state benefits, those premiums are going to go up. And those premiums are going to go up, and that cost of living is not going to change that dramatically once you're gone. So you still need to provide for that. Provide for a legacy for grandkids, things like that. And then you've got to figure out who's going to pay for those bills that took care of you as you go forward. So let's look at your life insurance. This is your state life insurance, and this is why we want to point this out. And Deanna and I feel strongly about this. Something that I learned, thankfully, Ann and Ray turned me on to this, is that whenever you retire, if you're on a health plan, you're going to get that $2,500 life insurance, okay? Everybody gets that $5,000 death benefit from the state. You get the $2,500 extra on top of that if you're stay on the health plan. If you had optional life insurance, you had the opportunity while you're on a state employee to get 4 times your benefit, 4 times your salary, up to a certain amount. When you retire, you can either get, and you chose this when you retired, $10,000 fixed or up to 2 times your salary with a max of $400,000. Okay, sounds great. As you age, and once you hit age 70, that optional life insurance coverage starts to drop. So the closer we get statistically to passing away, in the time that your family needs that life insurance, your coverage drops. You see it reduces at age 70 down to 65% of what you had before. And then once you reach up into your 80s, it's 15% of what you maybe took away. So you've got to think, is that enough money to pay for bills? Is that enough money to take care of my loved one, especially if I selected a pension option that my pension goes away after I retire? And the price to acquire your insurance, or the price to get your insurance, to keep your insurance, goes up as well. So while the coverage is dropping, your rates are going up. And there's a couple of examples in there. A 75-year-old is $144 a month with the state for $30,000 worth of coverage. At 80 for 30,000, it goes up to $235. So you really have to figure, do I have the right amount of life insurance to take care of those things? That's what Deanna and her team do. They sit down and study your state benefits. They sit down with you and go through side by side and say, at your current age, you have this, this, and this. As you start to age, you lose this. Are you aware of that? And still make sure and review those benefits with you. So important to have a plan, but know what's out there for you. Other things you need to consider, and we're getting near the top of the hour, is what are those retiree medical costs going to look like when you have Medicare? Sometimes they don't change. What's going to happen if the state changes their contribution or rates go up? Rates can go up. They haven't gone up, and I think they're not going to go up this year. That's good, but internal coverages can change. What's going to happen with that? Have I saved anything outside of my ERS pension? You know, what's inflation going to do to your retirement check? We've all seen inflation just the past few months, how it's greatly impacted us. And I pulled this slide up. I'll show you in a moment about the impact of that. TPEA members have told us, we talk to retirees all the time, and they tell us these 4 or 5 things keep resonating and keep showing back up. When you first retire, that gap between your pension and what you're making may not seem as big because you're not having deductions taken out. But as you go and that annuity doesn't increase, your pension doesn't increase, that gap may get larger. So you need to prepare for that. Preparing for those medical costs, especially for those of you with have spouses, those premiums start to go up for spouses pretty high. And so it's hard to estimate those medical costs, but you need to be prepared for that. The RMD situation, like we talked about, how that impacts not only your spending, but how it impacts your taxes, when to take it, what to do with it could be important as well. And if you die with dependents, the costs change. The full amount of their insurance coverage is weighed on them. That can leave a significant burden on your surviving beneficiaries, your surviving dependents, if you're responsible for that. And then also know that your pension check, it may be this amount now, it can change every year based on what insurance premiums change, if Medicare goes up, if the state charges more, tax laws change, what you withhold, those type of things. Just know that even though you think I'm going to get a paycheck that stays level forever, it may change because
John,
of
let me give you one example of that. The premiums for those of you who are on the Medicare Advantage plan or Medicare Health Select, the premium for the spouse coverage is going to increase in January by $17 a month. ERS said that there had just been some spike in, especially in prescription drug use, and that they had to increase premiums very reluctantly. But for those of you covering your spouses, that spousal premium will go up $17 a month starting in January.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. Again, pay attention to some of these webinars. We'll talk about some of those open enrollment periods and some of the changes that take place. We'll kind of highlight those as we go through there. Be on the lookout for that information as well coming to you. So those are some tips that some of your folks that have already gone ahead of you in retirement can tell you about retirement. You've got to prepare for many more years of living. Studies will show that once you reach age 75, for every year you live past that, you're truly going to live an additional 2 years. So many of us are going to live well into our 90s. Inflation, life changes, having to take care of adult kids who move back in with us, medical issues, things like that can really make a difference. So you got to prepare for that. And like I said, I've shown this slide in many of our presentations before. This was an old study a few years ago about the price of eggs and how inflation works with cost of living adjustments. You know, ERS currently doesn't have any type of automatic cost of living adjustment provision built in. TPEA, state legislator may approve these increases, may get those things working, but the cost of eggs was projected to only go up to a little bit less than $1.50 by the year 2030. You walk into HEB today, the cost of eggs is over $3. Inflation has an impact. How you prepare now can make a huge difference going forward. That's what TPEA and AMBA want to help you do. So I highly encourage you, jump in on our educational series calendar, find out about some things that we offer, find out about the basics of Medicare, the basics of long-term care. Look on the TPEA website, look for emails that come out to register, just need registration requirement. And before we kind of wrap this thing up, kind of share some more tidbits with us.
Well, actually, John, I have to apologize. I appreciate everybody being on the call and the webinar and all your efforts. But it is a few minutes before the next hearing begins, so I need to go back downstairs and register for the hearing. So I need to jump off.
All right.
But all I would say in summary is expect the unexpected in retirement. You think you know what your expenses are, you think you know what's going to happen, and then the next thing you know, there's a like I had the other day, a nail in my tire, and had to buy a new tire, or the inflation happens, or Medicare goes up, the premium for Medicare goes up. So just take a little time and plan for the unexpected, and you'll hopefully not have to go back to work or return to work unless you want to.
Exactly.
So thank you
Annie.
all.
All right, go get in that hearing and
All right.
continue to fight
Thanks.
for us. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Just a quick reminder, tell your friends, tell your fellow retirees, if they're not a member of TPEA, let them get involved in these lunch and learn sessions. Let them understand what's out there for them. We want them to become a member. Now, Deanna, you have been monitoring chat and Q&A. Is there anything that's kind of bubbled up that the whole group at large could benefit from an answer that we've got here?
Thank you, John. Most of them have been individual.
Okay.
Here's one that I don't know the answer to, but maybe Ray does. If I am a state employee, once I retire and after I pass away, do medical benefits for my spouse end, or does my spouse get to continue and choose optional insurance for themselves?
Your spouse, if your spouse is already covered under the health plan, then they can continue to receive the health coverage. However, the premium that's been paid by the state on behalf of the spouse will drop off. So the entirety of the premium for that spouse, which now is north of $400 a month, will have to be paid for by that spouse. And that is often a shock to the surviving spouse, and one in which we hope to keep getting the word out about, and folks need to know about. So I hope that answers that question. But as long as I've got the platform, so to speak, I gave you some information earlier that's outdated. The number, if you want to be on the list of those who receive text alerts, then text the word TPEA, the word TPEA, to this number, 972-217-4067. The number to text the word TPEA to is 972-217-4067. And when you do that, you'll be put on our list of the tens of thousands of folks who receive text alerts. And during retirement, you'll have a lot more flexibility to visit your local legislator's office, to make calls, or even to write letters, etc. So I urge you to do that.
Thank you, Ray. Real quickly, because we're almost running out of time here, if you want a benefit review or you want to have questions about your state benefits, please open up your smartphone camera, hover over that QR code, and a little form will pop up. You can fill it out with the information that you need. Deanna and her team will get back to you, walk you through what your state benefits are compared to what your TPEA eligible benefits are, depending upon where you fall within that retirement life cycle, what gaps you may have, what to look for as you go to Medicare eligible age, things like that. We're going to stay on the line, so to speak. Let everybody else go. Thank you for joining us today. We'll leave that QR code up. We record all of the question and answers in the chat feature, and that way we can respond back to you individually, things like that in there. So go ahead, use that QR code. Deanna, thank you as always for being our co-host today. Ray, thank you for joining us. And of course, is already in legislative hearing. Ray, I'm going to let you roll so you can get over there and get in those hearings as well.
Thank you, John, and thank all of you for all the labors of love for state employee as state employees.
Thank you, Ray. And again, if you want to use that QR code, if you don't have access because you're on your phone or on a tablet, my email address, john.green@amba.info is down there. You can shoot me an email and say, hey, have somebody contact me. We'll take care of you that way. So I'm going to sign off. We're going to still keep this up, put your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll be able to get back to you on that as well. So again, thank you very much. Have a tremendous weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care. Thanks, Deanna.